Hi, I'm Eva, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader, and this video was not planned as this. So I planned to read 10 memoirs on domestic violence and then wrap them all up together. And then I realized once I've read the first one that I was gonna make a huge long video if I were to do that. And usually long videos are harder to watch and they consume a lot of time, and people tend not to pay attention to them as much as shorter video a lot of times. So because of the topic, where I thought it was more important as a topic than what I normally discuss, not to say that books are not important, books are my saving grace, but I thought that memoir on domestic violence, which is just such a difficult topic to discuss, and at the same time it's such a topic that I wish people would listen to and get informed about and all of that, I thought it made more sense to make short videos. And so basically I'm kind of starting a diary sort of video format, super weird stuff, where I will basically have episodes on the channel where I will wrap up these books singularly, and I can give you a bit more details about what I thought about them. And let me know if you like this kind of episodes format, if you think it's more worth it doing my wrap-ups in this way, considering that I got really long TBRs that I put up on my channel, and one is coming soon, and which is really long. So if you think these episodic wrap-ups are easier to watch and you prefer them, just definitely let me know, because I might do this for other TBRs that I've got going on. So before I start, I just want to clarify that when I say DV, it stands for domestic violence. Some use the term IPV, which is intimate partner violence, just to clarify that the violence is between partners, someone involved romantically with each other. Instead with DV, it's more domestic violence that can be aimed not necessarily only toward the partner. It might be toward the mother, the sister, it might be toward, an uncle, it might be toward everybody who's in the household, including the children, just to get a bit of the terminology out there. And then you might be wondering why you're doing this, who made you an expert. And I'm not claiming to be an expert, I'm just someone who does happen to have some experience, though I'll get into that in a second, and also someone who really enjoys reading books, and I thought to just combine the two things. Now, I usually don't get personal on this channel at all. I keep my life really private, but I thought because of this, it makes sense for me to explain a tiny bit why this comes from. First of all, as someone who since childhood has seen and experienced on their own skin a lot of DV, and I've seen so much of it growing up, that definitely changed the way I am today. So that was the first thing that kind of made me interested in the topic. As someone who's, as a child, you don't really understand what's going on, and then growing up you kind of come to realization of, oh yeah, that was what was happening. That doesn't make me necessarily an expert, but DV or IPV, it's such a personal thing, and each person who went through it or saw it or witnessed it, it's such a unique experience. So there are some patterns that you can find, and they're repeated often by abusers, but then the way you experience it and the way your body reacts and your mind reacts is always unique. So I've never used the term expert, as it does look different for different people, but at the same time, if you've been through it, you can recognize patterns, if it makes sense. So let's put out of the way the fact that I'm not an expert, I'm just someone who experienced and saw a lot of it. And I'm also a postgraduate student in forensic psychology. Again, from my studies, I do study domestic violence and IPV, and I study offenders and victims and all of that. So it is part of things that I've studied for years now. And finally, what made me know a lot more about DV in adulthood, is my job. So I used to work alongside social workers. So again, we did see a lot of DV, current, historic, you name it, we saw it. We just worked with a lot of families and children that were victims of domestic violence, and that was just part of my daily job, more or less. So that where I got a lot of more experience on the field as a professional. And then now I got a new job actually, which I will be a youth IDVA in a major trauma center. And IDVA stands for Independent Domestic Violence Advisor, which means that I will be a counselor at the emergency department of an hospital, and sometimes in the general hospital, for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault victims that are of an age between 16 and 24 years old. So again, is part of my profession, if you want. It's been part of my life, it's been part of my studies, it's been part of what I do for a job and for a living. So that's why I decided to do this, and that's what led me here. Sorry for the rant. I'll start wrapping up the first video. I will be with different outfits, maybe around the house, depending on, you know, where I'll be when I wrap up one of these. It's not gonna be every week, it's gonna be when I read one, I'll do an episode basically. And yeah, enjoy and let me know what you think about the episodic thing. One of those days. Just wanted to share with you guys my pin. I think it would be nice if every time I do a wrap up like this, I'll have a new pin on. So I explained, I guess, what this is about, so let's get into the book. And yes, today, for this specific book, I'm on the stairs. So the first book that I actually picked up for this wrap up was In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. She is the author of Her Body and Other Parts, which I believe is her debut novel, where it's a collection of short stories. I picked up this book because of my job, so I just got the job that I mentioned and I wanted to read more, and then I came across this video on BookTube where they were just reviewing a bunch of books, and I heard about this and I did not know what this was specifically about. So it was a nice surprise to actually open up this book and realize that it was about domestic violence relationship between two women. So this is a memoir of the author for when she was, for a few years, if I'm not mistaken, around 1 or 2 years of her life, in a domestic violence relationship with another woman. And this book is written in short chapters that really, I mean, I flew through this book really quickly. I really like her prose. I found it really touching, but without getting too much flowery. And I'm actually glad that I got to start off this kind of wrap up, which is a really tough one to do, with a book based on something that we don't hear about much. It's undeniable that there are not many books out there on the topic of same-sex relationships that are abusive, and I think for this reason this is a gem, and now hopefully in the future will be more. With this, I do not mean that I wish for other people, you know, in the LGBT community to go through horrible things or abusive relationships, but because I know that these things happen, and in any kind of couples, I know that we do not know enough, and hearing from people that experience that on their skin and their story is invaluable, because that's how we learn. You know, you can study all the books about domestic violence on a scientific or, you know, psychology perspective and all of that, which is really important as well, but we never have to forget how much we can learn from actually the recounting of people that lived through it, because everybody's different and abuse, it's similar and yet it's different for everybody. So it is really important to see for everybody in every kind of community, in any kind of relationship, how that looks like. Not to mention how important it is for the people that have been abused, for the victim, to actually ever let out and to actually get to a point in their life where they're ready to talk and write a book about that. And that's amazing and remarkable in itself, because reaching that point where you're ready to talk, it's really hard. Not everybody does it, and hopefully get their experience out of their chest. At the same time, we're helping others, recognizing that they're not alone in what they're experiencing, or maybe, you know, some people that don't know they are in a violent domestic relationship. So by reading these books, they can counter realizations and all of that. It's just really important to know what's going on. So I was sorry for ranting, but I was really glad that I got around to reading this first. I'm not gonna read these books because I do not believe that it's my place to read memoirs on these topics, and yes, it is still a book, but I see this as a mean of healing for the individual, and I do not want to read that. So said that, I'm gonna still share with you what I liked and what I didn't like. And then the fact that I do not give, you know, these books a rating to 1 to 5 doesn't mean that I love all of them or appreciate all of them. It just means that I do not think like grading something like this is appropriate. I would definitely rate like a fictional book on domestic violence, which is, it's a bit different, but on this I feel like it's not my place or anybody else's place, to be fair, on rating such things, because I see this as a process of getting the story out, sharing knowledge with other people, and also healing, as I said. So without further ado, I absolutely enjoy the format of this book, how quick it was, how poignant and how touching, because the way we feel and we think is really difficult to put on a page. and she managed to make me read what she was feeling and thinking, which is hard to do. So I really appreciate that. I will definitely pick up more by her. Personally, I would have said that I would have appreciated to get a bit more into the abuses and what they were actually, those abuses that she was mentioning. But she does depicts a few scenes, but I believe there are thousands of scenes that she doesn't touch upon. She writes a lot about how she felt during those years in this relationship, which is absolutely fundamental to do, but she didn't go too much into the actual abuse apart in a couple of scenes. And I would have appreciated to have more insight of what actually happened in that instance. However, I also think it's not my place to ask. So apart from that, which I think we do not get too much insight of the actual abuse that she experienced. Said that, I don't want to take away anything for the fact that she can, she tell you how she felt. So, which is the most important thing. The abuses is not as important. The only reason why I am curious to know what actually was abused or what actually words were used is because at the same time we're reading these books, like my psychologist brain go off and says this is what she said, and from there I can get some other meaning. How she felt is more important than abuse itself. The only thing with abuse is that it can help recognize other people in relationship that are probably abusive. Say, oh well, actually that happened to me, actually she said the same thing to me. So that was the only reason why this maybe could have gone into a bit more details. Now this is a depiction of domestic violence that's mostly, I would say, the 99.9% psychological instead of physical. So there are some moments that kind of borderline into physical abuse, but it's mostly psychological, which is abuse as much as physical violence. It just works in different ways. A lot of times the things are combined. But I think one thing the author does is that because sometimes abuse is not physical, then people struggle more to recognize that as abuse. And I think that's one thing that this book does perfectly well. It's just about telling you that emotional abuse, psychological abuse can have impact on your physique and on your health, which are extreme. And so you might not be beaten up, but you might feel like shit. That's, I think, something that she conveys really, really well, the way she expressed how her body felt during that period of time, and how stress and anxiety worked on her body was really, really important to realize how emotional abuse is as bad as physical abuse, which I really appreciated. And I think that's something that I would praise the author for doing, just highlighting how emotional abuse has to be recognized and has to be taken into account as a domestic abuse. Overall, amazing that we have a book like this. I think it is a must read for everybody, to be fair. And I think it should, people don't really acknowledge that these things happen, especially with LGBTQ communities, and think they all should. Definitely a hard read, as all the books in this list will probably be, but I really, really enjoyed as well the writing. That's why I'm also saying, I'll pick up more by the author, because there was something about her writing which I've never read before. Yes, of course, I remember her because she went through these horrible things, but also because of the way she told me about these horrible things and the way she managed to tell me that was extremely unique. So I think this is a gem, not only in the genre, not only as a memoir on domestic violence, but also like as a writing style, new writing style I was exposed to. And this is definitely a book that I would recommend. And this is Eva from the future. I just wanted to add to that I really enjoy the end. There is also like a really subtle plot, if you want, which I really enjoy how it wrapped up, which is a weird thing to say, but if you read this, you know what I mean. And I think also that on someone who also studies perpetrators, I would say that 100% the woman who was the abuser definitely has some issue going on her own, and that's something that's not really explored, and it's not the role of the book to explore what's going on with this other woman. But I think it's undeniable that this woman had in her childhood experienced probably DV and had grown up to be an abuser, which is really common, although it must be said that the majority of children that are abused as children do not go on in life to be abuser or be offenders. So I think that's something that it's really important to keep in mind. Yes, they are a higher risk, but the majority of them do not. So there must be a comorbidity maybe of different things that led this woman to then become an abuser herself. And I think, again, it's not explored. I don't know this woman. I'm not gonna get in any more details because her behaviors were showed, but not enough even for me to get even a general idea of what might be going on with her. I just had a hint that something in her childhood led her then to be like this, but again, I don't know nearly enough to judge. And yeah, that was it. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, night, depending on where you are. I'll see you at the next episode of these wrap-ups. Thank you. Ciao.